think it's important to identify the different types of evil.
Yes.
To identify who's doing what.
Mm-hmm.
To put things into perspective. You take something like Antifa and BLM. This is terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the Chinese Red Guard. These are the foot soldiers. These are the fools.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are the convenient idiots. Then you have the DNC, who actually has some power, who actually is trying to maintain their hegemony over the culture. They're using those people. So they're the cons, they're the grifters, they're playing an inside-outside game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important that people don't just lump everything into one form of evil, because it changes how you're supposed to evaluate and deal with it.
Mm-hmm. That's hard for me to do, because I'm either I'm on this side or that side with a lot of issues, because in my mind, you are also a terrorist in a way. It's not the same thing, because you're not throwing the Molotov cocktails. But if you're turning a blind eye and you're allowing it to happen to the citizens that you're supposed to be representing.
Well, I mean, everybody looks at Trump and says he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, he should die, and everybody who supports him is a Nazi. But then when you apply that same logic to Democrats, they're like, I do.
It's not allowed. Mm-hmm. But I mean, they are enabling. I mean, there's cities in our own state that a lot of Republican representatives in the General Assembly are like, so why didn't the cops do anything in that municipality? And the only thing they can think of is that the Democrat leader of that city or town wouldn't allow the cops to do anything.
I mean, it's like a story as old as time, right? Every time a Democrat runs a city or a municipality or a county into the ground, he always does so with these sort of vague platitudes and memorandums about everybody being in it together. And meanwhile, he's gone. Mm-hmm. Just can't be seen until the whole thing's over.
Well, what they'll do is they'll say, I condemn the looting and the riots, but you got to understand, these people are in pain. That's what they do.
Vague platitude, concerned face. Mm-hmm. Sympathetic saying, concerned face. Emotional outpouring for vague group that I think will increase my odds of winning my next election. Condemnation of group that is bad according to that group. Concerned face.
Mm-hmm. It's like they're hurting, so they're allowed at their temper tantrums in the streets. Especially
those temper tantrums get them votes.
Yeah, which again, they're kind of using it as a bargaining chip. The riots. So it's, in a way, it's like, you vote for me and all of this can stop. They're doing it with the pandemic as well. You vote for me and you can go back to work. You won't have to have unemployment, that kind of thing.
You know what I've noticed is the Wall Street Journal, amongst other articles, starting to actually report the truth about masks and COVID, and our response to it might have been overblown. I find it convenient that suddenly now they're backpedaling the aggressive lockdown spin, and they're starting to slowly spin the idea of the lockdowns no longer being necessary. And my guess is that the masks will probably be able to cautiously come off. Public gatherings will be allowed again, with certain protocols and controls, by the time November 3rd rolls out.
I think so too. I think that's what they're handing them. You vote D, and this is what you get. Yeah. You get freedom again.
You can have your life back. If you vote for me.
And I think that's pretty filthy.
And you know what disgusts me even more is the Republican governors and mayors who went along with it. I mean, at least DeSantis had the balls to admit that it was stupid. He's never going to do it again. And then you've got Sweden over there laughing at us in Swedish. It's like, we have the same death numbers as everybody else, and we never shut down.
They're laughing in Swedish.
What does that sound like?
I don't know.
They're over there just clotting and having a grand old time living their lives normally.
They seem to be putting their stamp of approval on all of it, though. So the
DNC?
Yes, they were cool with the shutting down the economy to keep people safe. They're cool with, they really are. I mean, they are. They're cool with the riots and the looting and stuff like that, because they say, I condemn this, I don't like this, but you have to understand, if there's a but, that's a problem.
Right.
But then they're also saying on the back end, this is Trump's America.
Trump did it. Trump incited all those BLM and Antifa activists. It's Trump supporters infiltrating Antifa and getting violent, infiltrating BLM and looting those stores for those Jordans. Those are white people.
It's infuriating.
White nationalists.
It is absolutely infuriating because, you want to believe that we can just have a country that disagrees on taxes and things like that. And we're split in that. But now we have a whole political party that we can't believe a word in edgewise.
I mean, here's the thing I wonder about sometimes is I try to think about the end game here. Whatever happens, the either complete, utter breakdown of social order and everything goes back to the wild, wild west, and we're basically dealing with, red versus blue on an actual civil scale, like Civil War scale, or we're dealing with like apocalyptic scenarios. Or maybe we actually have some kind of a reckoning where everybody sort of comes back to some degree of normalcy. How can anybody with a conscience look at the Democratic Party, look at their neighbors, look at the things they advocated for, and all the destruction and hatred and division it caused? How are we not going to hate each other forever? Mm-hmm. Like, who can just forgive and forget after this? Mm-hmm. I know I'm not going to. Mm-mm. My Christianity calls that I forgive, but I sure as hell am not going to forget what you people did to us for the last 8 years. Mm-hmm. I'm going to remember, and I'm going to make sure they're held accountable for it. I'm going to remind people when they start getting conveniently comfortable and forget, because this stuff will come back to haunt us if we don't hold these people accountable for what they're doing.
Yeah, we have to remember. I mean, we need to remember the name of every mayor, every governor that would not accept National Guardsmen to help with the riots.
Completely partisan purposes, obviously.
We need to remember all of that. We need to remember the people who let their major cities in their state be burned down, and then get mad when they don't get aid from federal aid.
Lori Lightfoot taking the aid on the sly while condemning Trump on camera.
Right. We need to remember all of that. Your character does matter when you're an elected official. And the Democrats just prove time and time again, even their VP select, it just proves that they care nothing about character. I mean, it is well known that this woman slept her way to the top. It is well known that this woman put God knows how many, we know how many, but I can't think off the top of my head, how many black people in prison. But she's standing up saying she's playing her color card. They're freaking running a man for president who can't speak. He cannot put sentences together, and they're exploiting him. They're exploiting him. So, of course, they're going to exploit some 20 to 30-year-old kids who are on medication for all kinds of mental issues. Of course, they're going to use them as fodder for their war against people like us.
You got a bunch of Haldol and Klonopin-up pedophiles running around in the streets willing to shoot any old person in the back of the head because they're wearing a MAGA or Patriot prayer hat.
And white people should remember this too.
Very convenient foot soldier for an unscrupulous politician.
I'm almost hoping that white people get mad enough to start fighting back. Like it did my heart well this morning to see that militia of white folks in Louisville with AR-15s and stuff like that, because they're just like, we want to protect our city, and it's not about going out there looking for a fight. It's about protection. That's what men aggression is for.
Well, if democratically controlled districts and municipalities are going to absolve themselves of the responsibility of protecting life, liberty, and property, being one of them, then guess who's going to do it?
Exactly.
People who lose if that property burns.
Exactly. And what's amazing to me is those folks are getting demonized in the media.
Of course.
That they shouldn't be there. Kyle Rittenhouse shouldn't have been there.
Because they carry guns.
Well, one of the guys that he shot lived 30 minutes away. Maybe he shouldn't have been there. The other guy lived 45 minutes to an hour away. Maybe he shouldn't be there.
The pistol out on him had gun charges himself. I remember all this rhetoric about Kyle Rittenhouse. Oh, well, he crossed the state lines with a gun. First of all, incorrect. He retrieved it from a friend, which is actually legal. And then he used it in self-defense against another guy who illegally carries guns. So if we're going to play this little back and forth game about technicalities while 17-year-olds are going to be murdered in the streets, frankly, I don't really give a crap about the technicalities anymore. The Constitution was enacted to give us the right to self-defend, to defend our life, liberty, and property. This kid was defending property. Do I think it was optimal that a 17-year-old had to cross state lines to defend somebody else's burnt-out car dealership from a bunch of fascist lunatics? No, I think if it were my son, I'd be like, son, something bad's going to happen, and I don't think you should be involved. But God bless the kid for actually wanting to do it. If we had more Kyle Rittenhouses with that kind of spirit, we would not be in the situation that we are in.
Yep. Somebody's got to stand up. And, I've been asking myself lately, because, I got a pistol, and I'm like, and I'm pretty okay with it, I think.
You're pretty good.
Okay. I'm like, would I do it? And I'm thinking to myself, I probably would, because I can't do the talk and not walk the walk.
On a honestly.
And do it meaning protect someone's property.
This game has bothered me since I was a kid. It's like, well, we respect your right to, keep and bear arms, and they respect the legal language because they know they have to. But we're going to do everything we can to carve around it and to prevent you from ever actually doing it. And it just seems to me, it's like, just admit that you don't want me to be armed so that you can impose on me. Just admit it. Admit that you want control. Admit you don't want a resistant population.
Where are the worst riots occurring?
Democratically controlled cities.
Who have very limited use of their firearms.
Among other issues.
So it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me why we've got we've had riots in our cities. They've been bad. Like, we've had some statues torn down and whatnot, but they haven't been that bad. Because there's several gun stores in the middle of our city. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of people that are walking around with pistols on their hips.
We could have easily handled the protesters in our cities here in I guess I shouldn't really out our location.
Yeah, I'm trying not to, because people are crazy.
But the people in charge had an interest in playing both sides. They needed to seem sympathetic to the protesters, but at the same time, they also needed to keep law and order. And so everything was sort of this cute little dance where they were trying to use minimal force and let them hit property because our lives weren't worth defending property, even though that's actually our job.
Right.
So it was kind of a cute little game we were playing.
Yeah. It wasn't as bad. There's some cities that have been overrun by super liberal, super left-leaning ideas and people, and they've just been raked.
New York looks like Escape from New York.
It's bad.
A bad Kurt Russell movie.
But I think that the new Democrat ideology is okay with it, because if you can create chaos and fear, then people will want control. They'll cry out for someone to control the situation because they can't do it themselves.
And I think because they know that they would lose on their traditional path. I think if the Democrats took their normal trajectory of smear, lie, smear, and we're the good guys, they probably would have lost to Trump pretty handily. What they needed to do is they needed to create a situation in which they could sort of blackmail the US population. Well, the masks aren't coming off, your business isn't opening up, and you are not going to get any police protection unless you raise your fist and support our foot soldiers. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the perfect grift, it's the perfect con, it's the perfect...
Well, and even that protection is not guaranteed, because, I mean, how many houses did we see on video where they had BLM signs or Black Lives Matter signs in their window, and someone still spray painted all over their front porch?
What cracks me up is like the famous image of the Unitarian Universalist church burning and the signs burning, and it says Black Lives Matter on it. And Unitarian Universalists, for those of you who are not familiar, are basically the woke popes of Christianity. They don't believe in the Trinity. It's basically a social club for people who follow woke politics. It's like sort of the softest pedaled version of Christianity you could possibly find, that is quite literally designed for LGBTQ, AAIP folks and Black folks and SJW folks. And they're the first ones that got burnt down. You guys bought a giant pit bull and you didn't train it properly and it bit you.
That's how it's working. That's how it's working. I mean, it's pitting people against each other. And even if you're like, what if, like the lady who was at the restaurant and she's like having to back up like that.
Why can't you say Black Lives Matter?
Right. And she's like, wait a second, I've marched. But she was like, you are not going to intimidate me. And I actually had a lot of respect for that lady, because she didn't do it. Yeah, she would not bow. She would not put her fist up.
These marches, but she wasn't going to get bullied into doing something in coercive groupthink. When your own people are defying your tactics, you have a problem.
And it wasn't just Black people that was surrounding her. There were plenty of white people screaming in her face as well.
Image, yeah.
So you can pledge your allegiance. It's not guaranteed.
I just wonder too, like, what's the end game to all of this? You know what I mean? Like, this stuff has me so riled up, and I know it has everyone else riled up to varying degrees. Are we just gonna like go back to normal after the election 5 years from now, when another election's happened? Or is everybody just gonna be like buddy again, like nothing ever happened?
I'm also wondering if every 4 years this is gonna be a thing.
Me too.
Virus, riots. I don't know.
Is BLM going to come out of the closet like, 1 year, 9 months before every presidential election and suddenly pretend that they care about black people again?
Right.
Is Antifa suddenly going to gain traction and be the moral, halcyons of virtue?
I don't know. This is going to be interesting. What's cool is that we're like the next generation of like your Rush Limbaugh type of generation. And so when you said I'll never forget, I'm like, yeah, Rush Limbaugh has never forgotten things that happened in the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. And we should not forget. And so we get to sit back and watch, which is kind of scary and kind of exciting all at the same time.
The Christian side of me says that I have to forgive people. The logical side of me says I will never forget. And I will hold you people accountable for what you've done to my country. And I will make sure that people know that it was you. And I will keep a very long memory.
Don't forget. Because I don't think this is about a forgiveness issue. This is about a being wise and knowing who you're dealing with issue.
And it's a tireless enemy, too. I mean, all you have to do is actually sit down and geek out on history for a little while to realize that this is a recursive theme.
Right.
This is not new. We're just experiencing it for the first time, so we think it's the end of the world. All you have to do is go back to Maoist China, Siberia during the, communist revolution, the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. What happened to the kulaks? Who are the kulaks? You might want to Google that one. It'll make you upset. Don't eat right before it. I mean, this stuff is a repeating cycle, just the way bell bottoms and bad hair are. Everything goes in cycles. And for some reason, communist likes to rear its ugly head like a 20-year gopher or whatever, groundhog. And everybody thinks it's cute and it's interesting. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's so well-intentioned. No, it's outright evil and it's a lie.
It is. We could talk forever.
We really could.
We could. But for the sake of time, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching our show. This is Two Americas. I am Zinga. This is
Scott.
And you can actually look in the description below to follow us on the Twitter and the Instagram. And we have a joint Instagram account, Two Americas Show, _Americas_show.
Yeah, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share it with your friends. Every share, every like, every comment, it means something to us, and we greatly appreciate your time. If you're interested in hearing a white voice and a black voice talk about the craziness that's going on in our society, we're your show.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Take care.